Hi, everyone, and welcome to a BARF episode of Respawn Aimfire, where we're talking about Red Dead Redemption 2. Finally, for me at least, finally. I am here with Holden DePardo, as well as my regular co-host here. What?
You are Holden
DePardo. Spit Mountain Dew everywhere. I'm here with Holden DePardo.
Did I?
Yes.
Oh, I was thinking about transitioning over to my host, Chad Michael Innes, over here, and then I got mixed up with the sentences. I am Holden DePardo, and I'm here with Chad Michael Innes.
Hi,
Say
I'm
hi,
also
Chad.
Holden DePardo.
His name was Robert Paulson. We'll just get to that, but his name was Holden DePardo. And I'm also here with the fantastic video game photographer extraordinaire, Dallas. Dallas, would you introduce yourself?
Howdy ho, Dallas. Howdy ho, that's cowboy.
It's also Mr. Hanky the Christmas Poo.
He's a cowboy.
If you like Dallas's photography, or if you would like to see what it's like, you literally just look at the screen right now. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, like all of these screenshots, and there are 70-ish of them, are all from Dallas. Our little boy!
Thanks, guys.
So Dallas is the big Red Dead fan here. This is my first time playing Red Dead, and Chad is a massive, just Rockstar fan in general.
I'm a convert.
Convert?
What?
I'm a convent of nuns.
Oh.
In Red Dead Redemption 2.
I thought we could go around and just share. I thought we'd go around and just share like our initial impressions of the game, and then we'll start talking about the very realistic game mechanics of this game, the story of the game, the characters, also the structure of the story, and kind of how that in the world, and kind of how that kind of plays together too. That'll be interesting to talk about. But Dallas, since you are the Red Dead aficionado super fan, you've been begging me to play this game forever, it feels like.
Very true. I wouldn't say I'm an aficionado. I mean, I'm definitely a super fan of the game itself.
How many hundreds of hours do you have in it?
Well, do you count online?
Yes.
I don't know, like 600 maybe?
Oh my god,
Holy
that
Toledo.
counts. Yeah, that's an aficionado.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say like, I don't know like everything about the game, so I just know I like it a lot. It's my favorite game of all time.
It is your favorite game of all time? I did not know that about you.
Yeah. Well, you just asked us that like last week.
Did I? Wait a minute.
Yeah, you don't remember?
I thought Last of Us Part 2, I was very drunk on Etsy looking up
No.
birthday presents. So.
It's not Last of Us.
Yeah,
it's
it wasn't
not
my
Last of Us Part
birthday,
2.
so you didn't care what I said. You were only
That's right. I
trying
was
to
just
find out
looking for
what
Matt's
Matt knows.
response. Oh, I knew Holden.
Also, it's not Last of Us Part 2. It's also not
That's
Last of
what
Us
I
Part
thought.
2 because Ghost of Tsushima is better than Last of Us Part 2.
Oh, that's right.
according
You
to
and Brent are on
Dallas.
that weird train. Okay, sorry. Continue,
Yeah.
Dallas.
It's the real train. It's not a weird train.
We'll find out in August when I play the director's cut. We'll see where I land, all right?
You're gonna love it. I think that story and this story rival. It's like the best redemption stories in my opinion. Like I mean, don't get me wrong. I love The Last of Us 2. It was fucking a masterpiece. This game is also a masterpiece. Ghost of Tsushima is also a masterpiece. I just love this game more because I got to live in a world that I was free to do whatever the fuck I wanted to do. You know what I mean? I wasn't driven down this path that The Last of Us made. It's two totally different games. So
Yeah.
I enjoy the open world game. Another reason why I think I like Ghost of Tsushima more. It's just I implement myself into these games that are large open world games, and I lived through them for fucking 600 hours of my life. So, and I played the shit out of this game when it first launched, and I cried my eyes out when it was over. It was probably maybe like the second game that ever made me cry. And I fell in love with the characters, the setting, the story. I love it all. I don't think there's a bad thing in this game. I know you're probably gonna tear apart the mechanics and the gameplay and all that shit, but to me, if you play 600 hours, you'll become a master of it. Let's just say that. So.
Yeah. Chad, you were, I think, a little more reluctant to get into this game. I chose the game this month. I don't think Chad ever would have picked this game.
I'm gonna take two short detours that will come back around. The first one is the detour about Chad Innes the character versus Chad Innes the man. There's a character that I play Animal Crossing sucks. The game fucking sucks. It's a character. It's heightened a little bit for emotional impact, but I'm gonna step away from that character for this. Detour number 2. Imagine someone wants to give you a cat, and they're like, "Here, adopt this cat. It's the coolest fucking cat in the world. It wears a Batman costume. It poops in the toilet, and it learns how to flush it all. It also will get up and it will make you breakfast in the morning. And also, this cat rides a skateboard and can also go to work for you. Don't you want this cat? This is a fucking cool ass cat. I don't want a cat though. Like, it doesn't matter how cool it is. I don't want a cat. And that's my experience with this game. It does a lot of things really, really well, but I don't like cowboys and I don't like the West. They're stinky. The horses are boring. Horses are. It's a different West. This is the West of like, hey, we love being out at the beach and like fucking being progressive. Okay. But it's like, I'm going to go out and shoot everybody I want, and I'm going to explore the whole 1,000 trillion acres of nothingness, and there's a deer over there, and I can't wait to shoot it, and I smell bad, and my horse smells bad, and I just love getting drunk and falling asleep on a pile of hay. Like, that doesn't interest me in the least. I've never been interested in Western movies, never been interested in cowboys and Indians, never been interested in anything cowboy-related. Doesn't do it for me at all. So I was starting an uphill battle playing this game.
Except for Westworld.
Even Westworld, that part didn't interest me. The robot part interested me. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're
progressive
androids. Exactly, the progressive, yeah. So I was starting with that against it. However, there are a lot of really amazing things about this game. I played all the way through. I put 15, 16 hours into it, I think. Played all the way through the first few missions of Chapter 3. I didn't plan to play that much. Like, I got into Chapter 2, and I told myself, you will fucking finish Chapter 2 so you can feel like you can talk about this game, having experienced some of it. And I got all the way to the end of Chapter 2, and I kept going. So I played quite a bit of it. It has a lot of really amazing things going on, but it's just also literally the most boring thing I've ever fucking played. Literally. This is Chad Innes, the character, is gone. This is Chad Innes, the real person, being real with y'all. I have never been more bored playing a video game than when I was playing this video game. We will expand on that later. Those are my overall thoughts.
Wow. I will bring it back to the right side of history over here, which is that this is one of the best games ever made, in my opinion.
Conservatives, huh? The right side? Okay.
I thought the storytelling of this was incredible. I kind of think of it as Rockstar put an entire TV series together, and like each chapter is like a season of that show, and then kind of seeing that whole story play out over a really long period of time. At first, it's kind of like, man, this is like really, really long-winded. But the more I got into that world, the more I appreciated the characters, the more I was kind of along for the ride. And then having finished and looking back, I'm like, wow, that was pretty amazing. That was pretty breathtaking. It's just a combination of the world, the writing, the characters. As much as the realistic game mechanics felt like too much at times, I feel like it did help bring me into the world and buy into this world as something more real than you see in most games. I think it's definitely a gold standard in open world storytelling, but in a different way. If like Breath of the Wild is like completely open-ended, you can do what you want. This is like a heavily structured linear story told in an open world. But I'm fine with that. I think it's really good at doing that, and I think I can't wait to see what Rockstar does going forward. And I kind of can't wait now to go back to GTA 5 when the new version comes out and see how they handle that kind of storytelling, because that's a completely different world. And I'm like, I think these guys are doing something really special. I adored it.
Well said.
Thank you. I've been pretty giddy about this game.
I spoke very eloquently too. I said it well, and I didn't get any praise.
So I guess where do you guys want to begin? Like, do you guys want to start with the story of the game or talk about the mechanics? I feel like the mechanics is probably the most divisive part of the game. So let's start with that. do you guys feel like more games should go for this like super realistic approach, or do you think like they just did it well enough and no one else should do it, or no one else should do it because they didn't do it well? Like, kind of where are you guys landing
I was
on those
conflicted
mechanics?
on what they chose to be super hyper realistic and what they chose to not. Like, you get a gun. I thought it was going to be more often that I would have to polish my gun, which I guess you could if you wanted to for some reason. I don't know, better accuracy or something. But like, yeah, you have to clean off the shotgun the first time you get it. But also, you only wipe one side of the barrel and then the whole thing is clean. But you have to do that. But yet, skinning a deer takes 4 seconds. And then, you have to brush your horse, and if you're wearing the wrong clothes during the hot time of the day, then your health is lower or something like that. But also, you can't change clothes on the go because it's realistic, and you have to go home and change your clothes.
That's not true. You can change your clothes on your horse.
That makes sense. Because your horse is also towing a wardrobe. But like, there's that level, and then there are things like,
put an outfit in the saddlebags.
Not with all of your guns and shit too. So yeah, there's that level of realism, and then there's like the things that are like the things that should be super realistic, like the skinning a deer. Like, oh, it's going to take 4 seconds. Okay, so it's interesting that some of these things were realistic and some of them weren't. But I do feel that there were too many realistic things for me to keep me interested on what was important. So like I feel like in the future I would love for games to pick and choose the things that are important to be realistic, and then let you just be like, hey, we understand this is a video game and you're experiencing this and your time is limited as an adult person with responsibilities, and also like you have things to do. So like I like them for certain parts of the game where it matters, but I felt like there were way too many things in this that didn't matter, because if I didn't change my clothes, it really honestly didn't fucking matter. I didn't notice a difference between whether I had that heat stroke little symbol flashing or whether I didn't. So there were too many things to take care of that didn't matter to me. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, totally. And I actually agree. There's a balance where sometimes I'm like, that makes total sense. I think it works to like feed and kind of pet your horse and that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, like you don't have to do if you don't want to, but it kind of helps the mechanics of your horse. Like, it'll get better over time. They kind of better take care of it. So like there's like, I liked that kind of part because it's not so intrusive. Even the eating, like, it's not so intrusive. But then like there are odd times where they don't get the balance right and they decide to take the hand for you as opposed to letting you guide the way. So like, for example, my weapons will just change on me. I'll be like, okay, here are the weapons I like to use. And then I'll get off my horse and all of a sudden I have different weapons. And I'm like, let me go back to my horse and figure this out, because the game decided for whatever reason to give me weapons I don't normally use. And so like, it was realistic that you had to go to your horse and get and get your items. Like, I like that, but when the game changes the guns on you when it's just not very realistic, it makes that realistic mechanic of going back to your horse feel cumbersome when it shouldn't have. So there's kind of a balance, I think, sometimes, but none of it ever broke me out.
But in the game's defense, I went today to get a type of screw from Home Depot. I got home, it was the wrong type of screw, and I was like, damn it, I have to go back to Home Depot. And I had to go all the way back, get a different type of screw. So like, it's very realistic that you have to go back to your horse and change your guns because you don't have the right guns.
Well, here's a quick little tip. If you go to the gunsmith, you could select what guns you want to be locked into your sidearm, your shoulder, or your back.
Why is it a gunsmith?
Exactly, because the gunsmith is the only guy that has super glue in the whole camp.
Well, it's so that's where you go to set your preference for which guns you want to be locked into those slots. Now, that doesn't change the fact that when you get off the horse, you have to go and actually equip them. But if you get off your horse, like, you don't have to scroll through the guns that you want when you get off. You know what I mean? Like, if you're riding and you put your guns away, because that's what he does, because you can't ride with all that shit because it's supposed to be super realistic and all that shit. So he puts the guns away as you're like going for a ride, and then if when you get off your horse and you go to equip your guns again, it will go right to those guns. So if you press the L1 button and hit the thing to the left, it'll equip whatever gun you had there. Same thing with the back gun on the bottom. Your sidearm is always there no matter what. You know, that doesn't go away when you get off your horse. It stays there. It's so that's the one thing that I struggled with originally when I first played. Getting into the game was I found all these weird, realistic elements that if you didn't take the time to either look it up on the internet or read through the help menu or like really try and figure it out on your own, like play with the controls or the mechanics systems, then the game suffers a lot. Like I couldn't tell you how many people I knew that played the game. They're like, oh, the menus are so cumbersome. Like I just want to get to my map, and if you hold down the start button, it goes right to your map instead of just pressing it, scrolling over. So
God,
it's like stupid things like that. Yeah, see, that's what I'm telling you. It's like there are a lot of odd choices in this game, but I think because buttons are limited on the controller, and they want to implement all this ultra realistic immersion, they had to find a way around it. So I don't know. Maybe that's why they said, all right, well, we'll put this mechanic in the gunsmith where you can equip these guns. But you guys didn't know that. How many hours did you play, Holden? You had no idea, right?
About 70 hours. Yeah, no idea. Wait, here's the thing, too. Wait, quick question on that. I might have known it, actually. When you're at the gunsmith, because I've customized my guns. I had a very specific, like, all-black aesthetic with gold trigger and gold hammer. It's kind of like how I want my guns to look. And so that's why I was always upset when they weren't there, because it's like, fuck, these are the guns that I custom made and spent, like, a bunch of money to look this way. You could go there and I see there's like an equip button. I could say equip to shoulder, equip to. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
It didn't do anything for me. I did that. Yeah.
So
because I remember when I was there, it would equip, and it would equip like when I walk out, guns would be all set up. It's like when I would start a mission, it's like the game had written itself in a way that you're supposed to use the Lancaster repeater, and it gives you that gun to use, even though I have my bolt rifle and my pump action shotgun that I wanted to use instead.
Right.
But my sidearms are always there.
So you're talking about certain missions that gave you access to the new weapons that you're like, I don't want to use this weapon. I want to use the weapon I customized. Or
no,
just
not even
randomly,
new weapons. They would just give me an old weapon. Yeah.
That's weird. Yeah. See, that never happened to me. I don't know. That's weird. But I know what you're talking about. Like there's certain weapons where they're like, when you first find the shotgun, like you literally just pick it up off the mantle and then it's in your inventory and you literally just drop your old gun on the ground and it stays there until you go back to your inventory on your horse and you can cycle back through and you have it that way. So, I never experienced anything where like I got off my. So maybe it's because I know when I play this game, when I get off my horse at a place I want to be, I got to equip my weapons before I go and do whatever.
I would just go off sometimes. Yeah.
See, and that's what the 600 hours of this game has taught me.
I would hit a tree stump and my horse would go land on its neck and be like, cool, I'm just going to run from here. And then I get down the thing and it's like, oh, fuck, my guns.
Your horse is dead.
It's not dead. It's still twitching over there.
Did you have a horse revive or did you kill it?
The only time I ever killed a horse was in online when we were playing in online somewhere. That horse, Scraggly Nag or whatever it's called, Scrawny Nag.
Oh yeah, that dog doesn't deserve. It doesn't deserve to be around. It just doesn't. It's a terrible horse. I did have to put it on one of my horses because I made this stupid decision to attack a bunch of bandits, and they shot at me and shot my horse. I fell off my horse, and then I didn't have a horse revive. It was very sad, and I had to carry my saddle all the way to
very
Armadillo.
Realistic. Just having a horse revive in your back pocket.
What?
There's another example of something that's like, it's not super realistic that you can just revive a horse with something you have in your pocket.
Yeah.
Here's the top of a carrot. Okay, you're back to life.
That kind of stuff, like, health potions, that kind of stuff. Like, you have to have that in a game. You kind of can't get around that. But one that it did bother me, because I'm like, this should feel realistic, and it doesn't to me, is wearing a mask to be incognito. I felt like all the time I'd be wearing a mask, people would still go, oh my god, it's Arthur Morgan, like, wanted for murder. I'm like, what the hell? I'm wearing this mask.
Also had the name
apparently
tag
there's
on,
a very specific way to use the mask. Yeah, I had the hello, my name is tag. That's probably what it was, yeah. That one here, I don't know if anyone else had that.
So what you got to do is, if you want to commit a crime, say you want to go to Valentine and rob the doctor, right?
Yeah.
You got to put on an outfit that you've never worn to that town. You got to ride a horse into town or walk into town. Either ride a horse that you never rode into town or walk into town. and you have to put the mask on before anybody sees you. That's
very realistic. That's very realistic.
It's too much.
And then
it's too
the
much.
next time you go back, you can't ride the same horse, and you can't be riding the same outfit. Then you
That's actually I think that's kind of cool.
But it doesn't really tell you that that's the mechanic. You know what I mean? You gotta.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
You gotta either figure it out on your own or go fucking look it up. So
it makes sense, though. It does make sense because it's very realistic.
And that's one thing that I love about the game is that all these people, like everything you do, people comment on, remember you for, you know, like after you have that first mission in Valentine where you get in a bar fight and shit, like you go back there and the bartender's like, oh, like, let's not be rowdy tonight and shit like that. And like everybody's like, you know, they're talking about the guy Tommy who you fucking beat to stupidity. You know, he's just sitting there, he can't even talk to you anymore because you just beat the shit out of him. It's like all this world building is just right up my poop shoe. I fucking put it right up there. I fucking love it. It's great.
Let's move on to the world as well, because I think that's absolutely one of the. It's kind of a joke of like it's a character.
Before we leave like game mechanics things, can we just talk about like why does Rockstar have to make literally every button different than any other video game ever? Like why is clicking L3 crouching? And why is running double tapping X? And why is bringing up the map holding the start button forever? Like that is something that we have agreed upon as a society that like buttons do certain things in video games. And I felt like literally every button did the wrong thing in this game. Different.
I mean, I'll agree on the hit, like constantly hitting the X button to run faster. Like you can hold it down, but you have to like, if you really want to run to the horse. I agree with that one. But like, yeah, like L3 for crouch, I've seen that in games before. And holding on start button, I've totally seen that in games before.
There were also times when like picking things up or opening doors or opening cabinets and shit, like sometimes it's square, sometimes it's triangle. And it didn't seem to make sense to me.
Square is like the interact. Well, no, square is like the open button, and triangle is the interact button. So if there's like lighting the dynamite is triangle, but if you want to open a drawer, you have to hold square. But like for me, it just became second nature. Like I literally could do things in that game. If it's like I'm more efficient at doing shit in that game than I am in real life. Like I could go like ride my horse up to the hitch. Hitch it instantly, get off, pick up the fucking bounty that's on the back, walk into the fucking jail and drop it on the ground easier than I could do in real life. I mean, it's a video game, so I would hope. But it feels like I'm actually purposefully doing these button prompts, and I know exactly how, like, the smoothness of it. Like, every animation has, like, it's, like, point where the next thing you want to do, the animation kicks in is, I don't know. To me, it's the mechanics of this game. If you put hundreds of hours into it, it's like second nature. I think
I can see
it's perfect. It's perfect in my opinion.
I can see both sides in this one because I think that what they had to accomplish in this game was different than what other games have to think about. This game is thinking about the realism, kind of building you into that world. A lot of games like, hey, how do we, make the attacks easiest to get to? And so it kind of became second nature after kind of used to it because you live in this world for a long time. So that I agree with. But to kind of like what Chad's saying too, like one thing that was confusing for me is opening a cabinet is square, but looting a body and getting items from a body is triangle. And like I feel like to me that is the same action. I'm looting in both cases, but like one is handled a little bit differently. And I can maybe see why looting they would want to be an extra step to think about because you'll lose honor if you get caught looting a body. So maybe like that was part of it, but it definitely is like it has its own set of rules, even though I've seen some of it in games before, like largely they're kind of creating their own set of rules, the controls. But I don't know, like I think it worked well enough that when I stopped playing for like 2 years, or almost 2 years, and got back into it in the middle of chapter 4 or the very beginning of chapter 4, I was able to pick it up and I got it used to it after a little while, but it definitely had a learning curve to it.
So you didn't start this over?
No, I didn't.
Shit, dude.
What do you mean, holy shit,
dude? I thought you played it from the beginning. I'm glad you were going back to start it again so you could play through the beginning again.
I figured I would go back to the beginning at least, so I just figured I'd just jump into chapter 4. So also, I kind of largely remembered what happened.
from the first time you go and save Sadie, like when you go to that house and you run into the O'Driscolls and you search through her house, that's when this game was like, to me, it was like, this is on another level. Like I got a little taste of that playing GTA 5, where like, I don't know what it is, but there's something about that game when I found out that, hey, you're going to go do this robbery or whatever, you're going to go loot whatever it was, and the cash was separate. Like, you would pick up a stack of cash and shove it into the bag. This is something that I've never experienced in a game, I think, where I'm like, this actually feels like it's just so immersive. And that's how I got, like, once I found out that that's how a lot of this gameplay was, I fucking fell in love with it. Like, when you're going through her house and you're picking up each individual item, you're shoving it in your satchel, or you get the picture and you look at, flip it around, look at it. I was like, this is fucking great. I'm going to live this fucking game, and it's going to be amazing, and I'm going to love every second of it. And then when you go and hunt the deer and you pick the deer up and you throw it on your shoulder and you carry it over to your horse and you strap it in, I'm like, I done that probably tens of thousands of times playing this game, and it still feels so fucking awesome. I don't know, it's the stupidest thing, but it's just like, it's so realistic, it's so fucking real to me. It's just I don't get that experience in any other game I've ever played, just from picking up a deer and putting it on the back of my horse. Amazing.
And going to the looting too, and you're like looting Sadie's house and really looting any location. Every location is wholly unique. There's not like a copy and paste house that you can find somewhere where like it's all unique, it's all different. So when you're looting and exploring, it's also exciting because you can go through meticulously and look at everything, but it's a different house every time. There doesn't seem to be that, like, yes, there's a repetition in mechanic, but there's repetition in life, and the world itself feels unique, that when you're going through it, the repetition doesn't get to me at all.
I agree.
Yeah.
All over it. So he's all over it. You got nothing to offer.
See, my issue is that whenever I came to that same exact spot with looting the house and so, all I was thinking is,
running into things.
I've played a much better gunfight in Uncharted 1 than what I just played. And so I was like not in this world at all. I was like, wow, that was just really bad gun mechanics. And now let me find whatever I'm supposed to find in this house. And that's it. Oh, what button do I press? Why am I not pushing the same button for both actions? That's all I was thinking the whole time.
Can I ask how you were shooting? Like, what was your...
I would pull the one trigger to aim, and then I would pull the other trigger to shoot it. So left trigger would aim, and then right trigger would shoot whenever
you do a little flip up to get a headshot?
Yeah.
Occasionally, I would do that.
Did you do the thing where you can, like, keep holding down the left trigger, or, like, let go of the left trigger, hit it down again, and you snap to the next enemy?
I would hold the left trigger and it would automatically snap to whatever enemy was in the next 50 yards from me in either direction.
Okay. But would you do that continuously to like knock off guys really fast? Like, would you do it continuously to like get guys out really fast? Because that was really fun to me. I love doing that.
The Deadeye thing where it just like will auto mark.
No, like you can do that.
Unlock,
but there's also
locked on, unlocked, locked on, unlocked. Instead of like locking on, aiming, and then like dragging your stick over to the next guy. You could just like go kind of look towards it, click back on, and he auto aim again.
Right, that's what it. Yeah, it was just I would stop aiming, and then I would just click L, and even if the guy was 200 yards away, it would just immediately turn to him, and I'd shoot him.
Oh, I find it so satisfying. I love the combat, especially when you're on a horse and like you just got a bounty or something like that, and you got him alive, and all of his gang members are coming after you now, and you're like turning around and snapping on someone, taking your sawed-off shotgun and blowing them off the horse. Like, so I thought that was really satisfying. I loved those moments.
Didn't do it for me.
Didn't do it for you,
man.
No.
And just even the like action of pulling back the hammer. Like you shoot a fucking bullet, then you press the trigger again to recock the gun. Like that's like. It's probably annoying for most players, but for me, it was like, this is just fucking more realism, and I love everything. Yeah.
I just occasionally thought I'm pulling the trigger too fast, and it's not going to shoot this time for some reason. He was actually cocking the gun? Okay.
Yeah. Every gun, unless it's the semi-automatic handgun that you could get later in the game, which I'm guessing you didn't get that far.
Probably
or not, semi-automatic, they have a semi-automatic shotgun in the game. So yeah, so you would shoot a bullet, and then if you press the trigger again right away, he'd cock the hammer back, and then you have to press it again to shoot another round. and that's like
Okay.
just what other game
Knowing that,
is like that?
I would have. I mean, it would have taken out a little, like a fraction of the frustration I had with it, because I just thought it was just not responsive sometimes, or like, oh,
Especially
I'm trying to shoot this gun too quickly.
Even when you first aim, when you pull out your gun, you have to cock it. You know, like if you use the carbine, you know, like he'll aim it, and then if you pull the trigger, he doesn't shoot right away. He cocks it and then shoots. It's crazy, man. It's just the amount of detail they played. Yeah, it just it blows my mind, man.
Sounds like a wonderful, amazing cat, but I don't want the cat.
You don't want a cat.
Yeah, I think the cat's the problem. Like,
Fuck cats.
They do a really great job with the realism and all of this kind of stuff, and it looks amazing, but it's just still a cat to me.
And that's the thing. To me, these are the kind of games that I fall in love with. Like, the realism is what drives me. I mean, it is something that I look for in games, and this. Absolutely.
I think it definitely nails it better than any game I've played. Like, in going to the world and all that, every area, and I'm talking about the town specifically, every town just has this really unique feel to it. And then, like, when you're in roads and like the dust is going up and kind of getting into the view of the trees in the distance and stuff, like all that stuff is just like, wow, like each of these worlds lives and breathes. The people responding to you in these worlds, there's kind of two types of open world games. I think there's it's a real world, and there's like it's theater is the other kind. And like a really quick like test to find out which kind of world you're in a game: point a gun at someone in the world. If they don't respond to you, you're in a theater open world. If they respond to you, you're playing a game like Red Dead Redemption 2, where it's like this real world and it really responds to you in it. And so, like, an example, like this is actually one of the things I didn't like about Horizon was you point arrows at people and they just keep dancing or whatever. And I'm like, I don't buy into this world, because like you would be responding to this. Whereas like Red Dead is probably the best example of that, where like you go into a bank, you rob the bank, you can't go into that town again because they'll recognize you because there's a bounty in your head, and like it just takes it to this crazy degree. I loved the world of this game. And I feel like the more I played it, the better that world got, especially in St. Denis. When you get to St. Denis, things open up like crazy, and wow.
Yeah,
so I didn't mean to rant. I went to transition, but I ended up ranting about the world.
I agree with you that was amazing. Like, that was those mechanics, as little that I care about them, were astounding. And even people commenting on the clothes that you're wearing and the temperature outside are like, man, that looks a little hot for the temperature. Like, that kind of stuff was really cool. And then, of course, to play devil's advocate, there was one time, this is just a fun one-off thing that like doesn't represent the rest of the game. We were playing, and I pointed a gun. I think we were playing online, Dallas and I were. And I pointed at a guy who was just like, I don't know, making soup in a cauldron or something. I pointed my gun at him, and he goes, "Oh no!" And then he just keeps making his soup. And then I put my gun away, and I pointed at him, and he's like, "Oh!" And nothing about him. Of course, he makes the noise like, "Oh, please don't shoot me!" But he's just like, "I'm just gonna keep making my soup."
And then you shot him. You put a whole fucking all of your bullets.
I shot all my bullets into his soup.
To be fair, that was Gus, who is he is a important NPC in the online role. So like, if you kill him, it's gonna break the fucking game. So they don't allow you to kill him.
I just pulled my gun on
but
him, and it wouldn't let me
if you
shoot
pulled
him.
your gun on any other NPC that's not an important role playing part of the game, you would kill them and get them out.
On the opposite side of that coin, this is actually back when I first played the game back in 2018. There was one awesome like random NPC encounter where I had to go collect a debt for the gang. I go there, and the guy's not being cooperative, so I just start beating the crap out of him. This is by Emerald Ranch. And this one NPC goes, "Oh my god, that guy's beating the shit out of this other dude," or something like that. And I'm thinking, oh no, he said, "Oh my god, that guy's robbing him." That's what he yelled. He's like, "This guy's robbing him." And I'm like, "I'm not robbing him. The guy owes me money." He's like, what I literally said out loud. And then Arthur responds back to the guy and says, "I'm not robbing him. He owes me money. He's paying back a debt." And I'm like, what the fuck? That's what I just said. But it was a really cool like moment where it's like it felt like the system failed for a second, and then it totally redeemed itself. It was great.
So yeah. Samsung TVs are listening to everything you say.
Just repeats you. Yeah, so in my opinion, once I learned the mechanics of the world, that's when it blew. It's the best world ever.
Yeah.
created a video game. Especially once I spent hours at the Emerald Ranch fence. We bring the stagecoaches in.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I made thousands of dollars over there, because what I would do is I would just basically troll that little area for stagecoaches. But I learned the mechanics of the witness program, or the witness mechanic, where if you did a crime and it prompted a witness to witness it and go to report to the law, you would have the opportunity to get their attention, threaten them until they agreed to not get the law for you, or you just kill them and made sure nobody saw it. And if somebody saw that, then you kill them. If they didn't, so like I would do that for hours, just sit in that area, clean up all the stagecoaches, rob all the people that said they were going to go tell the law, kill all the people that didn't stop when I told them to stop. And I learned that mechanic, and I saw a lot of people complaining when the game first came out about like, how do I stop myself from getting these bounties and all that shit? And it just made me realize that if you don't learn the mechanics of the world, then this game doesn't resonate as well. Like once you learn, especially that mechanic in particular, because I think I spent a lot of time and it drove my honor like all the way down. So when I played this game the first time through, I was the most dishonorable you could be going into chapter 6. And, I made it a point to get back to honorable by the end of the game so that I could have a decent ending to the story. So in my opinion, if there was a right way to play the game, that's the way. You play like a scumbag outlaw until you get the news, and then you go on that redemption trail. And I didn't know if I'd have enough time story-wise to get back to... I mean, I guess there is ways to kind of glitch the system. Like you could catch fish and throw them back, and it'll raise your honor and shit like that. So there is ways that you could get through to the end by cheesing the system. But I didn't
murdered countless people, robbed so many banks, but he threw
Just
some fish back. So he redeemed everything about his character.
You get into town and everyone's like, "Oh my god, that's Arthur Morgan. I heard he threw back 45 fish. What a great
what
man.
a good guy." And actually, you could just walk around town and greet people instead of like antagonize them, and that'll raise your honor too. But so I learned the mechanics. I learned what made me dishonorable, what I did that was wrong. Like you could loot anywhere, anybody anywhere, and you still get a dishonorable ranking. It doesn't matter if somebody saw you. If somebody sees you do it, then they'll go and run to the law, and you'll get a bounty. But I robbed and looted everything and everyone until I realized, like, fuck, like, I don't want to be a scumbag. So, like, if I killed someone, I didn't rob them. I didn't loot them. I let their fucking shit stay with them. But yeah, that's what made this game the best, in my opinion, is the world. Once I learned the mechanics of the world, it was like, it all made sense. You know what I mean? Like, there wasn't a mechanic that I was like, oh, this is fucking stupid. And it played out perfectly, in my opinion. Been any better.
So Ted, you got to, I think, Rhodes, I believe, be where you were in the game, not story wise, like in the world.
Name of a place?
Yeah, so I think because you're in Valentine in chapter 2, and then after chapter 2 you go to Rhodes, I believe, so the next kind of town, like south of Valentine.
Like the new camp that you get.
Yeah.
Not the Horseshoe Overlook camp, the other camp.
Yeah. And there's some guys like, I want to marry this girl, or we're in a relationship, and women's rights and that kind of stuff. And yeah, is that in Rhodes? Does that all happen in Rhodes?
Yeah, it's in Rhodes. Yeah, okay. That was a great mission.
Yes, I was
mission. There. The women's suffrage mission.
Yeah.
Did you happen to see the death of, like, I don't want to spoil or anything, but whatever.
Well, this is a spoiler cast.
Yeah, okay. Go for it.
Well, for you. Personally.
Oh, I'm not going to play anymore.
He's not going to play it.
I know. So did you witness the death of Sean?
Is Sean the boy who was in love with the girl? Who is Sean?
Sean is the...
I don't know any.
All right, so Sean is the Irish dude that you save. You go on the mission with Javier and Charles, and he gets captured in Blackwater at the beginning of the game. And you go and rescue him from the bounty hunters. He's like hung up on the tree. And then when you get to chapter 3 in Rhodes, there's a mission where you guys are all walking through town, and he gets fucking shot right in the head, like in a cutscene.
No, I did not get there.
So, I mean, whatever. But I think from that point on, I'm like, this game is like no holds bar. It's gonna get fucking crazy here, and I think even Holden agreed. Like chapter 3 is when shit is like, it's not that slow, boring bullshit. I mean, there's still a lot of that. You could still like drag it out, but like that's when the mission structure gets a lot more intense, and dramatic and fun, and
specifically the end of chapter 3 where you go to the plantation and just wreck shit is amazing. So it's one of the highlights of the game.
They kidnap Jack, John's and Abigail's son, and you have to go to the Braithwaite mansion and like get him back. But you basically set the whole fucking place on fire. You kill everybody. You kill Braithwaite, the woman. So like, the woman, like you fucking, it gets crazy, man.
Yeah, I agree. From that point on, the story is when it kind of hits its stride. I was asking Chad about like the Roseland area, just kind of get an idea of like what part of the world you had seen yet at that point. Like had you gone over, to Saint Denis and that kind of stuff.
I did Saint Denis whenever we were all killing people at Dallas's house for fun.
Oh yeah. That's right.
I've been there, I think, in online once or twice as well.
Probably.
Mm-hmm. I think Saint Denis is one of my favorite locations in that game. Just the lighting at night is it's so beautiful. It looks crazy good. I have a hard time believing this was running on a base PS4 well. But it was. It ran really well on a base PS4. #cyberpunk. And it's a feat. It really is. There is one thing that's kind of, the cities themselves, I think, stand out to me. Like each area, like town, stands out to me. One thing though is that the open landscapes, I couldn't. How do I put this? Okay, so comparison. Breath of the Wild, I feel like you could show me literally any location in Breath of the Wild and I could point to a map and be like, that's here. That's the Akala region. Oh, I recognize those trees. That's where the Zonai ruins are. Like, I could tell you where certain things are in that game. Whereas this, I could tell you each town. I could tell you like, oh, that's absolutely like Van Horn. That's Saint Denis. That's Valentine. I could do that. That's Blackwater. But like locations of the overworld, I could tell you sometimes where they were. But so often I'm like, that's just a field of green with a nice mountain in the background. That's the kind of only one thing is like, I loved the world. Because the one thing about the world that was kind of lacking for me is so much of it felt the same. And there was so much space between everything that it didn't feel like some of the areas had like a unique personality outside of like entire regions. Like where Emerald Ranch is, that whole area is just like a big open green field, which is distinct from the marshes by like Saint Denis. Like some areas are absolutely recognizable, but a lot of it felt the same to me.
So I think probably the issue there is it's broken up into states. And in my opinion, all the states are different. But the states, of course, so big, especially the Heartlands, like that area is so big, it's like all a lot of the same look. Mm-hmm. Plains, mountains in the background, rivers and streams here and there. But when you experience a section of that map for a large amount of time, basically what I did was I made myself a mountain man. The first time I played through, like literally grew his beard out, his hair out, and I just lived in the mountains. There was times where I spent so much time hunting in the mountains that dudes from the camp, like Javier, would come riding and find me. They'd be like, "Hey, where you been, man? It's good to know you're okay." You know what I mean? The camp misses you. Like, you should come back sometime. And I'm like, all right. And you either have the option to go back with him right then, it's just cutscene to get back there, or you can be like, yeah, I'll see you around. And I would just spend weeks up there. I just camp out up there. So like those areas came very recognizable to me. And the grizzlies, the tall trees. So like, each state has its own little area, like counties to it. And I could tell you, like, you show me a picture of anywhere on that map and I'll tell you where it is. Because how many time did you spend in Breath of the Wild?
That's a good point. Yeah, I spent about 300 hours Breath of the Wild. Yeah.
So there are things that are distinctly different, in my opinion. But I've spent way more time there and experienced almost everything. So.
No, I can definitely agree that each state definitely has its own unique feel to it. I can agree to that for sure.
Chad's only been to one state. So.
Was it only in one
states.
state? Why were some of the ones that were
No, you went to two.
attacking me then? Okay. It was all beautiful. It was all so gorgeous. In fact, that was one of the things I was kind of disappointed in a little bit, is I wanted to be able to absorb that beauty a bit. Like, for instance, playing God of War 2018, one of the things that I think made that a better experience for me is that I turned off all of the HUD, and I just played that game just so immersive like that. And I wanted to do that with Red Dead Redemption 2 as well, because I just wanted to soak it all in. And then Holden was like, you should turn on your minimap. You should turn on your minimap. You didn't get there. I was like, fine, I'll fucking turn on my minimap. Because you can't do anything without the minimap.
Yeah,
you have to have it open.
You need to have it.
And it's like, and then I found that like 75% of my attention is just focused on one tiny corner of the screen instead of everything else that I want to be looking at instead. And so I was a little disappointed by that, because I wanted to play it no HUD as much as possible, but you just can't. It's impossible.
I totally agree with you. Like, again, going back to Breath of the Wild, like, you could give, I would say, okay, I see a point on the map and go, okay, I see it over there, I'm going to head to it, and I could figure out a way, even if I went off the beaten path a little bit, I knew how to get back. Whereas, because you're forced to take the roads, you could just run through fields if you wanted to, but I feel like the game works better if you run on the trails, because you run into strangers, that kind of stuff. And I agree with Chad completely, where it's like, I spend all my time looking in one corner, and not looking at the rest of the world all the time when that's what I really wanted to do. And I know you could probably listen to NPCs who will tell you exactly where to go. I think I heard somewhere that you can do that and know where to go, but I'm like, that sounds like a pain in the ass, considering how long some of the treks are to go. I couldn't memorize all those steps.
I mean, I the only time, sometimes I'll just hit the compass. Like, you could make the mini map just a compass, and if you put a marker on the map itself, it'll show like a little red area of direction that you need to head. So like, if you follow the fucking trails, you could be going the total long way around that way if you're not paying attention. But yeah, it's you're right. You need, I think, in my opinion, the best, stay on the trails. Like I was yelling out, who's that yelling?
Brent. Yeah, Brent. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's the best. It's the best thing, especially like if you don't want to kill your horse. That's the best thing to do. Stay on the trail. But you run into, there's not a lot to do on some of those long rides, but if you want something to do, you should probably stay on the trails, because that's when you run into people that, people that need help, or just random people running through that you,
or a bobcat that's going to attack you.
Yeah. So, it's, as a photographer, I spend a lot of time just looking for beautiful spots anyway. So I'm not concentrating on that map on the mini map as much, but I could definitely see why.
Let's talk about the story, or even, actually, before we get to the story, on the trails, we meet strangers. Where's some of the strangers, or stranger tales, some of the strangers' tales that you found that you enjoyed?
Chad, did you find any?
None. If I heard somebody yell, "Oh my God, please help me," I was like, I don't fucking care about you. I care 10% about this person that I'm on my way to. I care 0% about you.
I think that misses on a really, really magical part of the game. Some of the best stories, I think, come from the stranger tales, in my opinion.
And they should have put it in the main game.
No, it wouldn't have worked in the main game. I have one that I'm thinking of in particular, but Dallas, I'm curious which ones you have. What are some of your favorite stranger tales?
I enjoyed the veteran one. Like, that was one of the funnier ones, I think, in my opinion. You run into him in Valentine at the beginning, and he just like wants a hug, and you're like, I accepted. I was like, all right. So you get off your horse, and like everybody's just standing there watching you give this harmless veteran a hug. So I don't really remember much of them. I don't know how many I've played through so far since I started replaying recently. But you mentioned some, I'm sure it'll re-jog my memory.
The veteran one's funny. I'm pretty sure I played all of them, because there aren't any more popping up on my map. I looked at the list online, and I feel like I got all of them. But the veteran one's a funny one. What a weird ending, though. You literally just dies, and then you just leave his body there and walk away. It was so it was really weird.
He dies from your hug?
No. So
you
the
hug
whole
him so hard
thing
he's dead?
You
You see him again throughout it.
Okay.
Yeah, and you go on like hunting trips with him.
You gotta hug him in every town.
On hunting trips.
Oh wait,
No.
So you're talking? No, you're talking about Oh, I know who you're talking about. No, that's not even who I meant. But that is the best one in my opinion because you get his horse. Did you take his horse?
No.
Blue? His horse Blue?
No, I didn't take his horse.
Ooh, dude. I took his
Good
horse.
horse?
Fucking great. His best horse. Well, so there's one other horse that's better in my opinion in the game. The best horse in the game is you can find him up in the Grizzlies near that lake that you first go when the game first starts and you're near that lake.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back up there, you can find a white shit. I forgot what kind of horse it is, but it's the best horse in the game. It's the fastest horse. It's got the best stamina. That technically is the best horse in the game. But in my opinion, the horse you get from the veteran that dies after you do all those missions with him, it was my favorite horse. And I
should have gotten him. Damn.
So the question I had for you when you finished was, did your horse die at the end of the game?
Yes.
Okay. Did you go back to him?
No, I didn't.
So I think if you have a high bond, I'm not sure if it depends on what your bonding level with your horse is. Were you on the horse that you used throughout the game?
Yes, I never changed horses.
What horse was it?
The Tennessee Walker, I think.
So was it the horse that you get at the beginning of the game when you find it in the?
Pretty sure it was
in the barn.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But so yeah, you probably had the highest level bonding you could with it. Obviously, if you used it throughout the whole game. If you go back to it when you get shot off your horse when you're escaping with John, you have this like cutscene where like you go and like thank it as it's dying, like you're petting it, and you like give it a little kiss, and you like and he just whispers thank you. Dude, it's like
and Holden's just like, fucking leave it. I don't even remember its name.
Like, fuck hell. It's a Tennessee Walker.
I was being chased by the Pinkertons. I had to go.
I was like, I'm going back to that because it was blue. I was like, I'm going back. I had to see if it was okay.
I gotta get all my clothes off of it.
And all my weapons.
They're just like real life. They'll magically show up in the next horse you get. Don't worry.
Right. Yeah. You don't get a horse after that. You get a horse in the sky.
I wish I had gotten. I wish I had gotten blue because that makes the ending of that story make more sense.
Yeah, he used his horse.
Yeah, he died because we were chasing some animal, and the animal killed him, and then I avenged him. I killed the animal back, and then I'm like, is that it? And it's like it's just dead bodies right there. I'm like, oh, I guess I just walk away. It's the end of the story. I couldn't pick him up to like bury him or anything. I'm like, all right, just walking away. Let's go, Tennessee Walker.
So my wife just got home. I got to take a piss. Give me 1 second. All right, I'll mute the mic so that you guys don't hear this chaos.
No, can we please?
You want it? I'll be right back.
I don't need to hear you pee. One of my favorite stranger missions was one I found in Murphy County, in chapter 6, and you just come across this one guy who's yelling on the side of the road like, hey, just like yelling, and I'm like, all right, let me go over and see this guy. And he's pointing, and he's not saying anything, he's just pointing in one direction. So I figured, all right, this guy's nuts, he's like super drunk or something. I put him on my horse and I brought him to where he was pointing, and there's this little like town, and they're all weirded out by me, but they're thankful I brought their friend back, and they said, you better be careful out there because you're gonna get cursed. And Arthur Morgan's like, what the hell are you talking about? And then I leave, and then a little while later I get a mission icon saying I should go back to that location. So I'm like, oh cool, I really want to know more about this town where they were talking about a curse. So I go back. I'm talking about the town that thinks they're cursed in Murphy County.
I don't remember that.
It's a stranger mission, so maybe I might be spoiling a lot for you here.
No, it's okay.
So I go back to the town and talk about how cursed it is, how terrible the curse is, and then this guy comes up who is, wearing Native American garb, and he's talking like, oh yes, beware in the woods, there's the evil curse out there, and like, oh my god, here comes the curse right now, and just these dogs come running in and they start like, barking at people, and just as Arthur, you just shoot them all down, and like, oh my god, you saved us from the curse, and they start to love me. But then the guy in the Native American garb is like, no, he can't be trusted, he is a demon. And he's like, I'm not a demon, there's no curse, what are you guys talking about? He goes, don't listen to his lies. And I'm like, this is weird. I don't know what was going on in this town, but this Native American guy is clearly telling this whole town like blatant lies. And you end up doing a few things where, like, he says that like there's dream catchers out in there, or he doesn't call them dream catchers, but there are dream catchers that are out in the woods. You have to shoot them all down to get rid of the curse. You go back and say, well, the curse is gone now. And one of the people in the town says, you start voicing your like suspicions of this Native American guy to someone in the town, and they're like, no, he's a cool guy. And I'm like, well, isn't there anywhere that he's kind of try to keep you guys from? He goes, oh, he just says don't go over to like that area over there, and he points to like this waterfall. You go to the side of the waterfall, and there's actually a mine down there, and in the mine you find there's actually arsenic in the water, which is bleeding into the waterfall and by the water source for this town. So you kind of realize, oh, that's the curse. That's why people are like, that's why they're uncomfortable and people have died apparently, is because this water is poisoned with arsenic. So you go back, and the Native American guy is making all of these people sign a document to basically take away liability from this mining company who was mining over there, and it messed up and put arsenic in there. It turns out the guy's not Native American at all. He was just pretending to be Native American to fool this town into thinking that there's a curse going on, and you kick his ass and he gets away. And I don't know, it was awesome. But like, that was just, I came across all of that because some guy was yelling on the side of the road, and I decided to find out what was going on with his yelling. And it's just like, that was really cool that behind that one, like, I could have just gone past that and I never would have found it ever. But I decided to find out what was going to happen. And then I ran into that kind of cool little quest line. That was really, really awesome for me. That is, and it's actually pretty common that happens. Like, all the stranger quests seem to have resulted in something. Not all of them, but a good chunk of them seem to have resulted in that kind of story, where it takes you somewhere, is a full-on mission structure to it, and that was impressive to me. That made the world very believable.
I think I've just been.
Do you know what the name of that one was? Hold on.
It takes place in Murphy County. Let me see if I can find it.
I think I've just lived in big cities enough of my life that I know if someone's just yelling at me from the side of the street going, hey, it just means they're homeless and they're bored or on drugs, and you just keep walking. And
there's some of those in the game too, so.
Yeah, and I don't, even if I'm, like, what really surprised me is Arthur Morgan, when I played him, it was like, he's not a good guy. He's bad. So he's not just going to like, okay, friend who's screaming on the side of the road, let me take you to your home and tuck you into bed and give you a little kiss and put a chocolate on your pillow. Like, no, he's just like, fuck that guy. In fact, you're lucky I didn't just shoot you in the head right now for fun.
Yeah. Because so there's like legitimate stranger missions like that, and then there's those people that need help. Like, I've ran into guys who've gotten bitten by a snake, and they come like running out of the woods, and they're like, I need some fucking help. And then like, you have two options, like give them health medicine. Well, you have three. It's like ignore them, give them some health medication, or suck the venom out of them.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, so it's like those little things too that make the world. Like, I was riding down the fucking trail, and sure enough, there's this woman. She's screaming for help, and she's trapped underneath her horse. The horse just died. So you like help her get out, and she's like, you could offer her a ride back home, and you take her home, and she tells you this whole story about how like she had to borrow her friend's horse to ride out to this man who wanted to give her a job because her husband left her, and her and her kid can't get by. So like, it's like all this crazy stuff that if you just heard her yell and you rode by, you'd miss all this like immersive stuff.
I can't find the name of this mission.
Are you sure that wasn't just a regular mission?
It was 4 parts.
Yeah, well, instead of like a stranger mission, it was just an actual mission in the game.
Well, like I think it was an actual mission, but it
quest. Because the stranger missions are like collect the cards.
Well, okay, so let me clarify what I mean by that. You find that mission by interacting with the stranger, just like the normal stranger missions So like you hear somebody yelling on the side of the road, you go talk to them, but then it resulted in, and that was actually just started off with a pretty typical stranger mission, which is you take the person to their home. Like, oh, my horse like fell over, I need to be taken home. Like it just was kind of like one of those. Like this guy is super drunk, he's pointing in one direction. I guess I'll take him over there because there's a town over there, and then it tells you to go back to that town later on, and then the mission starts from there. So it starts off as a stranger mission, but then it expands to something larger than that. But I can't find out where it is. It was in Murphy County. But I can't find the name of it. I can't remember what it's called. It's gonna bug me.
I mean, even when you go to the camp, like if you sit and chill at the camp and listen to the stories from your gang members, like some of the stuff is awesome. Like just stuff that you think is just nonsense of them putting in dialogue to like fill silence is legit backstory to like some of these characters, and some of it's hilarious. Like there was one encounter where I forgot what happened. I think I wrote it down. It was the Reverend. It was right after saving the Reverend from getting drunk and stumbling onto the train track. You get back to the camp and Uncle is like giving him a hard time about something, and he says something that like literally made me laugh out loud. Oh, okay. Reverend and Uncle got into an argument, and Uncle asked him if he was going to howl at another moon because he's always drunk and acting a fool. And he's like, "Are you going to howl at another moon like this one?" And he turns around and he opens up the little flap on his fucking pajama pant things, and like Moon's like shaking his ass at him and stuff. And I'm like, this is just a random like interaction that they're having at the camp that like you could just not even witness if you just walked the other way instead of I stood there and watched the whole argument happen. He fucking shakes his ass at him. It's like, and Reverend's like all pissed off at him, and Uncle's a character anyway. So I was like blown away. Like these little things like this makes this game fucking so much better.
Yeah, the campsite's a lot of fun to stick around and see what happens there. Absolutely. Even just when you're walking through it in a way to mission and someone calls your name and just like wants to let you know something, like cool moments there. Absolutely. We should probably jump into the story. So you've been talking about the game about almost an hour and haven't talked about the story once. But I think it goes to show how much is in this game and how much there is to talk about. So in terms of the story, Chad, we're just kind of starting out with the story of the game. What happened from what you saw?
So there was like 4 hours of looking at horse butts, trying to pay attention to people talking with their faces away from me. And so I didn't catch much of that for the first part of the game. But then it did, like, there were actual cutscenes and the story started to progress a little bit more, and I started to get a little bit... I was able to pay attention more. So that started, we got our new camp, we went and robbed that train, and then the boy and the girl and the mansion and all that. And that's it. That's about as far as I got. Oh, we we went and tracked down the boy. We went and pretended to be lawmen. Went and helped track down the boys who were trying to jump on the train. And when you just push them off the train, I guess that immediately means they get captured and arrested, even though no one's coming to get them. But I did that as well.
Chad, did you enjoy the mission you go on with Lenny?
Yeah.
You just go and get drunk.
No. I think because you guys overhyped it. Because you were just, oh my God, there's a mission with Lenny in Chapter 2. You're going to fucking... And I got there, I was like, oh, this? Is this the thing? And yeah, I was not as impressed by it.
In my opinion, that's the best drunken experience in any video game in my...
Yeah. I agree with that. It was a very good representation of being drunk in a video game for sure.
I just like because of how unique that mission is compared to the others, where like you're running through the saloon trying to find Lenny, and you'll like walk in on a guy and a prostitute, and they're like, "Get the fuck out of here!" Like that whole moment was like fucking hilarious. You get in the drunk fight outside the bar, like that was such a fun mission. I love that mission.
You're looking for him, and all the other bar. People everybody that's there, like all the patrons are like churning, like it's his face.
Yeah, like, I love that I did like that every single person eventually became what was his name? Lenny.
Lenny, yeah.
So sometimes he would look at it, and that person's name would be like Looney or like Lunty or like Lambie or something like that.
Yeah, he's like mumbling some word.
It Yeah.
It was awesome. Everything about that Valentine section made that game like so unique. I just remember riding into that town and being like, "This is like I've literally it feels real." Like, did you know that you could follow an NPC around and they like live a day cycle? Like they don't just do normal NPC game shit. Like they actually, some of them have a job. Some of them, like, you could follow one. I mean, I've never done it, but from what I read, you could do it. But it seems like you see certain people doing the same kind of things. Like there's one guy that's kind of always going to the bar at a certain time, and it's not just game mechanic shit. It's like it's real life fucking thing, It's crazy. It feels like a real town.
Yeah, the Valentine I think is a good first. It's the first major town I think you hit in the game. I think you go to Strawberry for a little bit in the beginning. I think
that's where you get Micah. You break Micah out of jail.
Bastard. Mike is the worst. Yeah, he's terrible. He's not. He's spoilers for chat, but he's actually informant for the police.
He seemed like a douche.
Yeah, well, because he is a douche. He's also racist as fuck, and just not a good person all around.
Fucking piece of shit.
Yeah, he's a huge piece of shit.
I'm just so glad he didn't kill me. I would have hated that game if he killed me.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that for sure. Yeah, so the first few chapters is really just introducing you to the gang's predicaments. It felt like they're on the run. They're constantly being cornered by civilized society because civilized society is kind of growing around them. And that's kind of like being introduced. And I feel like in chapters 4, 5, and 6 is when you start seeing like the culmination of that. It's a slow burn story. And I at first kind of thinking like it's too slow. Like this is not progressing like meaningfully from mission to mission. But I kind of feel like I wasn't appreciating the journey as much as I was looking forward to getting to the destination. And I'm kind of looking forward to playing it again and appreciating more of that journey along the way. Because I kept kind of wondering myself, like, oh, when's this next plot point going to happen? When's this next thing happen? I feel like I lost a lot. Because when, kind of what Chad was saying, like at the beginning, it's like people were just talking. And like, what were they even talking about? I felt that when I first played the game. But the second time playing, because I played the first few hours, again, after beating it, I immediately connected to what they were talking about and the stakes of what they were talking about. And I could see how like future conflicts that happen in the 6th chapter are already actually kind of starting to brew in that first chapter. But it's not obvious. And I feel like the first half of the story could have done a better job at that. But I actually think that them not doing that also made the world more believable as opposed to it being about these plot points. So I don't know, I'm kind of like conflicted in that way, but that's like a minor gripe because I think overall the story is fucking incredible. Like it's especially the end of it is just amazing. Once you get back, so like at one point you in chapter 4 you do this like big heist, which was an amazing heist. Lenny dies, which is a really shocking moment. I won't forget that. Jose dies. Yeah.
Dude, Jose, that fucking destroyed me, man. Because he reminds me of my papa so much. Just like his appearance mostly and his like fatherliness of the whole situation. I mean, obviously my papa wasn't like a fucking outlaw, but that's besides the point. And
good cover. He really was. He's still on the run to this day.
That whole mission was like just tough to see. Some of the best characters in the game go down.
Yeah.
Even Sean. Sean was awesome too. I love them all. I think Charles is my favorite.
I don't remember Sean too much.
You don't
Charles
remember Sean?
I love Charles.
Well, Sean dies very early, so I can see why you don't remember him, but he was awesome.
That's why I want to go back.
When you first save him, he's hilarious. Like him and Arthur, like it's weird because it's hard for me to understand if Arthur is just a jokester or he's really, because they always bust his balls about being a grumpy asshole, a grumpy old bastard. But like he's like very playful with a lot of the gang members, so it's hard for me to realize, like, understand if he really is just a douche or if he's very playful and that's like their banter back to him. They just call him an old grumpy bastard. Sean was great. They were all great.
Yeah,
continue.
No, you're fine. Just like the Lenny moment really got to me because just how it's introduced and how it plays out. Like, they kind of just get you running along the rooftops and saying, do you need to get away from the Pinkertons? And then they bust out of a door and shoot Lenny, like, in game time. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, that moment was crazy. It felt so sudden how they did it. And then you get to the whole, like, getting onto a deserted island because the boat you escaped on, like, crashes, and then coming back in the redemption arc and finding out your tuberculosis. Like, things in 4 or 5 episodes, chapters 4, 5, and 6, like, really ramp up. And I think that's where, like, the storytelling is at its absolute best. The way they introduced Arthur's tuberculosis and the way I played through it was perfect. Because I had gotten back from the deserted island, or not deserted island, where was it? It was Guarma, yeah. And I'm like, my beard had obviously grown out because I was there for a while. My hair had grown out, and like I hadn't had time because the mission structure to go back to a barber. I'm like, oh, there's this mission in Saint Denis I'm going to go do. Let me go to the barber there, and I get cut, and I'm looking in the barber shop, like look at Arthur's eyes, and I'm like, man, Arthur looks fucking terrible. Like, he looks really bad. He looks really tired. I'm like, well, he's been through a lot of shit. And then I start walking in the streets to my mission, and then Arthur collapses. And there's this whole, like, thing of someone walking up to the streets and trying to pull him up, and we gotta take you to a doctor. And then you go to the doctor, and you get the, diagnosis for tuberculosis. And he just, like, the way that it was introduced very naturally for me in gameplay, it was probably an accident that it worked out that way, and I noticed it like that. Or was it? I have no idea. But it was, I'm like, that was really well done. Where, like, the story was told within the context of something I'm normally doing in the game, and then there was a consequence for that was surprising. And how surprising in how they introduced it. That was a really, really cool moment for me. And then you start to kind of look back at the past few chapters and thinking back to what you did, and are you a redeemable person? And then, like, the redemption part of the story starts to kind of come in, and I'm like, it was a long build up to get to this, but it was really, really well done. Like, there's so much to talk about the story. Like, I couldn't possibly talk about all of it now, but like that got to me a lot. And then just Dutch Vanderland's story. I think Dutch is probably the best character in the game outside of Arthur Morgan. He's just seeing his full arc. They have to make his story for the third game. They have to. It's too good to do a prequel of him building up the gang, all that. I need it. I don't know. I've been talking a lot. I feel like there's just a lot to talk about. There's a lot to the story.
I completely agree. I think from the moment you get back from Guama, the mission structure and the storytelling is just perfectly intertwined. It makes it seem like it's, like the open world part of the game is actually like a whole mission. Like, it's, I don't know, like you said, how you were walking down the street and you collapsed, like that same thing happened to me. So it wasn't just, it was by design that was supposed to happen, and it worked out perfectly. Mm-hmm. So then with me too, that was the first time I had shave when I came back. I was like, all right.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I shaved, I got a haircut, I had the full grown beard and full grown hair, like at that point when I got back. I was like, I'm going to go get a haircut. I know that, this is chapter 6, like this is towards the end of the game. Let me at least look presentable for the rest of it. And, same thing. I was looking in the mirror. I was like, dude, he does not look healthy. Like, what's going on? And I knew that he gets TB because I had it spoiled for me, but I didn't know when you find out or how it happened. Because I don't know. I mean, I guess you can find out later how it happens, but you don't know when it happens. It happened. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it was, that whole chapter 6 was perfect. It made that game probably. That was the reason why I think it's the best story in gaming I've ever. Is that whole redemption arc in that last chapter.
Yeah, it absolutely is up there for me. It's it's like one of those stories I think have only been told in a video game in the way that it was told. It's just really, really well done. And it kind of goes back to the whole idea too of it's like it's a TV show. Like, it's not a TV season, it's like a whole show. You have these arcs in these character transformations happening over the course of, 50 hours of content. Like, that's as long as a really solid TV series. It's miraculous. It's miraculous they're able to pull this off. I don't know how they planned this. Like, it's nuts.
Lots of crunch. Lots of crunch.
It's true. Lots of crunch, yeah. And pulling in, I looked this up. They pulled in every single Rockstar studio to work on this game. So it used to be like, oh, why do they release, 3 GTA games on PS2? It's like, well, because they had so many studios making the games. Now all those studios are making one game at the same time. Holy shit.
The production quality in this game is the best in the world. It's absolutely like the seamless
for open
transition.
World, yeah.
Right. True. The seamless transition from gameplay into cinematics, like you get that little, the view zooms out, the bars come in, and then all of a sudden you're in like a cinematic cutscene. It's like flawless. It's top notch. And
Do
the
you
characters.
think that... Sorry, keep going.
Well, just the characters alone are some of the best characters I've ever had. I mean, besides like Mass Effect, where I'm playing through that now too, so that might be. But the relationship you garner with these characters in an open world structure like that is unmatched.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the resources that they put into this and the crunch that they had to go through to create it, and then not seeing anywhere near the return that they see for GTA 5, like, do you think that they're going to make another game in this same vein, whether it's in the same series or just like as realistic as this and another IP? Or do you think they're let's stick with something a little less resource intensive and just make another moneymaker like GTA 6?
I would say 2 things on that. One is it sold 37 million copies, which is like an
unbelievably
high
game of all time.
Yeah, it's I don't know if it's, I don't think it's up there. But I mean, Minecraft would like easily beat it. There's a lot
Tetris,
of games
a lot of games.
Yeah, but this brought in fucking bank for them. They brought in 750 million in the first weekend alone, and I'm sure they've brought in, billions since. So I think that they can't gauge everything based on how well GTA 5 did. Otherwise, they'll never be happy. You know what I mean? Like, not the next GTA 6, I wouldn't be surprised if that didn't sell as well as GTA 5. Like, if that was the pinnacle, like, that's really hard to... It's like PS2 is like 155 million. That doesn't mean that PS3 and PS4 weren't worth it because they didn't sell 155. Like, GTA is just like astronomical. And I think they also have said, this second point, and I think they also have said that they want to make Red Dead a franchise. So I think they are on that boat. Where they'll go with it from here, though, I don't know. There's a few different directions that they could go in. Dallas, we were kind of talking a little bit too about where we want this to go from here. You had some good ideas.
Well, I think I wouldn't. My hot take was that you play the next game as Sadie.
Mm-hmm.
I could see, them leaning towards a female protagonist, but then you also mentioned that next GTA is supposed to be possibly a female lead.
Yeah, it's probably going to do multiple protagonists like GTA 5, but one of them, one of them's going to be a female. Apparently, she's the like brainy, tech smart, like does all the hacking kind of side stuff for whatever organization they're working for. We have no idea.
Playing as Jack and getting redemption for what happened to his father at the end of the original Red Dead, I think would also be a cool thing to witness. And I definitely agree with the storyline of Dutch. Like, it'd be cool to see how he became. I mean, we technically know what happens to him, but to see how he came up, formed a gang, became the leader that he was, and maybe get a little of his point of view of what transpired, especially we don't really know what happened to Blackwater that led to all this shit hitting the fan. What he was thinking when he sided with Micah and against Arthur, and how he felt about Arthur kind of going against him, and what he was thinking when you run into John on the mountaintop, Micah at the end there too. It'll be nice to see what happens to him after that, where he goes after that.
He's in the first game, isn't he, Dutch van der Linde?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, the whole point of the first game is to find him. Basically, the government comes to you, John, and they're like, we need to hunt down Dutch. You have to go find him.
Gotcha. Okay. Because I don't remember much about the first game at all. So
that's
I've been
why
thinking
I wish
about getting
they would
that
just
on Xbox.
remake that. And like Chad said, perfect opportunity here. You don't have to put a ton of resources and production costs. You have that fucking map, all right? Like, the world is in this game. Just, you have assets. Just throw them over there and just, write this. Like, you don't even have to rewrite this. I don't know, whatever. It'd be great
I went to Armadillo and a few of the places from Red Dead 1, and it is like shot for shot the same thing. It was so nostalgic going down that hill over to Armadillo and crazy. Yeah, so they totally could. I think the Dutch Vanderland story would be really interesting, because I think one of the things is that the question I have about the character, and this is like a good question to have, is when did Dutch start to lose control? Did he ever really have control? Yeah, and I feel like a prequel could shine some really interesting light on that. Like, how did he end up at the top of this gang? Did he do things to prove himself that way, or was it such a mess he just kind of ended up being at the top? And I really want to see that story. I think it'd be really unique. But I also think Sadie's story could be really good too, because I had totally, again, because I jumped back in chapter 4, I totally forgotten that you rescue her at the beginning and that she's pregnant in the beginning. I don't remember what happens to her kid. I don't remember what happens to any of that.
Does she have a kid? I don't remember her.
She was pregnant. She was pregnant. Yeah.
Was she?
When you first find her, in the beginning of the game. So I don't remember what happened. And I'm like, oh well, she's like this huge hard ass now. I'm like, I bet that's related. I need to go back and play that and see that. Because like her husband died right before the events of the game. So she has a lot of tragedy there. And to kind of have her be this, single outlaw on the road, or not even an outlaw, she's a bounty hunter. That'd be very cool. I also heard, and this is kind of in line with your Jack idea, of having a Red Dead game that takes place during the Roaring 20s, where outlaws start becoming organized crime in cities during the Prohibition and that kind of stuff. I'm like, that sounds amazing.
Oh yeah.
Because I think one of the things that would carry a really interesting theme, I think, from this game. And one of my favorite parts of this game is this idea of the world is changing around you. Do you adapt to it, or do you fight to maintain this way of life that you've enjoyed, even though there's about a 0% chance you're ever going to be successful?
And to be honest with you, their idea is to run from it. They don't even want to fight it. They're trying to, like, they all want to go west, where there's less civilization, less law, and Dutch brings them back east. He's like, no, we're going to go east. We got to find some money, and then we'll go west again. And everybody, that's what the whole conflict is like, they're like, not promise, but, our goal was to get west. That money we had in Blackwater was going to get us west. Arthur and Hosea had a plan, and they were about to go through with it until Dutch and Micah had this other plan that screwed everything up, and they had to run. They retreated back into the mountains and then went east instead of west. It would be cool to see all that back, like, oh, well, you couldn't go any further. West isn't an option anymore. Now everything is here. You have to fight through it instead of run.
Yeah. There's a lot you can do with that. I think this is a really exciting franchise, and I can't wait to see where they go forward with it. I feel like, yeah, we're getting close when we should be recording the main episode now. So let's kind of share our final thoughts on the game, and then we'll wrap it up. Chad, your final thoughts on the first 2 chapters of Red Dead.
It was a really beautiful, well-trained, awesome cat that I just didn't want.
I honestly think it's the greatest game I've ever played. May be the greatest game ever made. Production wise and scope and story, characters. I mean, it's all just pinnacle game making, in my opinion. Masterpiece of open world. To do it in an open world like that is quite the feat.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Play it twice, because I think once you build that relationship, that's what I was telling Holden, like, now that I have a relationship with some of these characters, they stand out a little more. Like, you won't forget Sean again. I guarantee you, the second time you play through, you won't be like, oh, who was Sean? They stand out so much more once you build a relationship, care about these characters, care about, happens, their arcs, everything. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wish I had during it. Because as you guys are talking about, like, oh my god, and then I fell in love with this character, and and there was like I literally, like, you say all these names, and all I picture is bland, dirty white guy, and I don't know which one's which.
And we didn't even talk about like Rainfalls and what was his father's name?
Rainfalls is great.
Like, dude, the storylines with those guys, like, it's just so fucking good.
That was another like really good moment for me, because when you were here, Chad, you were leaving, you were and finishing chapter 1, you're leaving the mountains and you're heading down to Valentine, or to the Shoehorn
Shoehorn Overlook.
Sure, Shoehorn Overlook, yeah.
Horseshoe Overlook, the Horseshoe Overlook.
Horseshoe Overlook, yeah. And your wheel on your wagon breaks, and when it breaks, you're putting it on, you see 3 Native Americans up on a rock looking down at you. Those are characters that are vitally important to the last half, and I met them again to kind of set up that story for the last half right when you were in Texas. Like the same day I saw this, the same day you saw them on the rock, and it was kind of cool to be like, oh wow, they set up so much in the beginning, and you see that when you're playing it again. So kind of what Dow's saying, play it twice, because like the first like several hours of playing of it, I got so much more out of those first few hours than I did the first time, and I really genuinely can't wait to play it again, which is not something I say very often at the end of a BARF episode,
especially when the game's this long. You're having a conversation with Jose while you're traveling through, the wheel falls off, you see them, and he tells you their backstory. He's like, they pushed all these Native Americans out of these lands. Like, this is their lands. Now they're up in the reserve, and the redemption arc, you get to help them. You know what I mean? Like, you can choose to help them or not, and that helps you. It's just so fucking good.
That was another thing we didn't get time to go into is, you talk about, like, this is a little political, but like we talk about this time where it's like, oh, and you have to be historically accurate and all these things, therefore you have all these bad characters, because back then people said stuff like that, and I think there's validity to that sometimes, but I think Red Dead handles that perfectly, where the characters are all like willing to help out the Indians. They have this different take on the They find a bond with the Indians because they're feeling the same kind of constraints on them from the U.S. government. And they kind of do a really good job of telling these stories with characters who are not these hugely hateful, like, people who you, to be historic, like you might have seen at the time. Like, they did a really good job with that, of like saying, hey, here are the bad parts of our history, here are the good parts of our history. And you're seeing that through the lens of these characters who I think are outlaws. So I guess maybe not the best moral agents, but in a humanitarian sense, in some respects, they were good. They were good characters, the good moral compass. I don't know. It struck me how well they walked that balance really, really well. And I wanted to call that out too. I'm not explaining it very well, but hopefully you get what I mean.
I gotcha.
Cool. All right, well, that is our Red Dead Redemption 2 BARF discussion. Next month, we are doing, actually, technically this month now, we're doing a smaller game, since we did Final Fantasy 9 and Red Dead Redemption 2 back-to-back, 2 very, very large games. We're playing Katana Zero, so in about a few weeks, we'll be talking about that game. Started already. It's very good. We'll talk about that. And Dallas, do you want to plug your shits, your pictures, and your Twitters, and all that stuff?
Plug it.
My Twitter's These Many Games. Follow me at These Many Games.
It's on the
where
bottom
I tell
left
inside
of
jokes
our screen right
to
now.
like these 2 guys and 2 other guys. That's my whole Twitter.
You can go back,
And
if you're
maybe post a
curious, go
picture.
back in his history and just look at all his comments on pictures of food from Alex Cozina. That'll be a good 10 minutes of your time.
That put him into a whole new career.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
Cook streamer now.
Chad, plug something.
My butt
With what?
with marshmallows.
Okay.
And I'm holding the part of, this is Respawning Fire at Respawning Fire on Twitter and all podcast services. And for a usual sign off, I'm handing it to Chad because Chad does all the sign offs.
Oh, we don't do usual sign offs on BARF.